I think, I mean, primarily as a historian, you're trying to uncover a degree of causality. I mean, I think, particularly in terms of when I'm researching, the First World War experiences, I think I came to the story of Caribbean soldiers in the First World War through the kind of anecdotal kind of assertions that were made about the First World War leading to a kind of nascent form of nationalism that experienced of the Caribbean soldiers in the First World War, particularly in the British West Indies Regiment, gave rise to a level of politicisation that in the post-First World War period then feeds into the emergence of nationalism. I think certainly in the first instance, causality was a big kind of issue for me. As I say, as an undergraduate student, when we were looking at nationalism in the Anglophone Caribbean, the First World War was kind of looming in the background, but there was always a sense that nobody had really tried to unpick what the actual effect of the First World War on Caribbean nationalism was. If you look at Arthur Lewis, Labour in the West Indies, for example, published around in the wake of the labour unrest in the Caribbean in the 1930s.
Yes.
There's brief references if you look at C.L.R. James's classic account of Captain Cipriani and Trinidad and the First World War again. But I think this is where the work of the playwright becomes so important, because I think over time I've moved away from a concern with causality and looking at all the different nuances. What are the individual motivations for individuals enlisting? How are those kind of myths and ideals of empire shattered by the experience of the First World War? I think it's really important that you explore that in a creative manner.
The details are so lovely, because finding things, I was looking at the newspaper, and they've got the notices that were sent or about church services, and the women being persuaded to send their husbands to war because their husbands didn't want to go. And the plantation owners wanting the healthy men to stay and work on the plantations and not wanting them to go off, so they want to send all the sick ones. The ones with malnutrition, whatever, send them off to the war and not. It was really fascinating looking at it. And then one very sad thing I saw in the Institute of Jamaica was a list, I think typewritten, of all the men who died. Just the names just listed with the odd handwritten note beside them with what date they died or something. And it absolutely hit home to you that these were sons, fathers, all kinds of people. And it's just this list, that says all of these men died for this war that actually nobody knows about in Jamaica now, probably don't care about, but actually shaped the way that we see ourselves. I think it's,
And as you were saying, in terms of the Jamaica War Memorial in National Heroes Park, it kind of, in a sense, it's there. I mean, what's interesting about that War Memorial, it was actually in a more central location in Kingston.
Oh, right. Was it up a parade or something?
I think it was in Church Street in Kingston. Right. And there's pictures in the early 20s, 1922, I think the memorial was unveiled.
Yeah.
1953, King George VI Memorial Park was unveiled, and the memorial was actually transported at that point, and that's subsequently that park's now renamed National Heroes Park.
Because we wanted to get
so there's that whole transition, isn't there, from empire, the affinity to the British royal family. That's often, if you look at accounts of the First World War, and you look at accounts of the abolition of slavery, for example, in the standard sort of narratives, the sense of Jamaicans, particularly, but other West Indians, having this sense of loyalty to the British crown is very
slavery ended, one of the songs that was sung was Jubilee, Jubilee, this is the year of Jubilee, Queen Victoria set me free. And there's nothing at all like that. But this is what I'm talking about, the myth of empire, which I think is really interesting. And as a playwright, you're going up and trying to create other myths.
And I think the other important issue to bear in mind as well in the context, when we're looking at the history of, islands like Jamaica, is the importance of oral culture.
Yeah.
That in terms of the narratives of the individuals who came forward to volunteer, and I think it's always important to remember that every Jamaican who enlisted in the First World War was a volunteer. That, in a sense, many of their individual stories have been lost.
Yeah.
We have a few fleeting accounts of white officers. We have kind of fragments of Norman Manley's autobiography, which makes brief reference to his experiences of the First World War, particularly his experience of, receiving, racial abuse, despite the fact he was quite a light-skinned man. But I think these little fragments, there's what we might call a kind of archaeology of memory, isn't it?
Yeah.
These little fragments, you might go into a schoolroom or a church in Jamaica or elsewhere in the Caribbean and see a small kind of tablet or memorial that perhaps...
I went into Michael Teacher Training College, and not only did they have a model of somebody dressed in the kind of clothes of the era, which of course I took a picture of, but there was a beautifully carved wooden plaque to two teachers or teacher training, people who had been training to be teachers, who had died in the war, just carved and set into the wall, and you walk past it, everybody walks past it. It's right in the middle of the admin office, but there it is. So history always, this is what I love about it, it's never gone. It just manifests itself differently.
And it's looking out for those little fragments, isn't it? The little memorials, maybe a photograph in the newspaper that somebody sent home, or a letter in the newspapers, which might be one of the few outpourings from one of the few voices of the ordinary experiences of the Jamaican soldiers.
Well, I tried to write the ordinary voices. We'll see whether it works in the play.